And I love that they've added that feature.
Yes.
Can I tell you? It was so many times you would forget to hit start recording. So that was never fun. Hi guys. Folks are starting, I can see people are starting to enter into the space here. Hi everybody. Thanks for joining us today. And just giving everyone a couple of minutes to get prepared and centered. I'm really excited about today's guest and what he's talking to us about. It's really, as we were chatting in the green room, I do have some work going on in the volunteer world for a nonprofit, and this type of training is so super necessary. And I'm going to be taking notes and I'll be sharing the recordings, but which brings me to the point that we are recording this and I will share the recording with everybody who registered. So thank you. As you're joining us, feel free. I'm going to open up I'm going to turn on live transcript if you need to be watching if you would like to watch the closed captioning. Maybe you're in a space where you can't really hear so well, so it comes in handy for that. If you don't like it, you can just go down to the CC emblem icon down at the bottom of your screen in the toolbar, and you can deactivate it. Totally up to you. And then here, I'm going to open up the chat, and you are able to, everybody should be able to message everybody, anybody. So welcome. I just threw that in the chat. And if y'all want to just type in a little bit your name and let me know who's zooming in from where. I'm in New Jersey, and our special guest Douglas is in Boston. So looking forward to hearing where you all are zooming in from today.
And we found out we both have connections in Pittsburgh and that part of the country.
Yep. Okay. Hey, Jody out in Denver. Nice to see you. And Dave. Oh, and Van Buren. Are you familiar, Douglas, with Van Buren?
I'm not.
Up in Maine. Sandy's in Greensboro. Hi, Terry in Florida. What part of Florida, Terry? It just sounds warm. It's really cold up here in the Northeast. We had this like lovely weather for 5 minutes.
Nancy's from New Zealand. I love it. Thank you.
Oh, Amy. Okay, the Borgen Project. Thank you. My son has an internship with the Borgen Project this summer. I would love to chat with you about that.
Nigeria.
Thanks
Great.
for joining us. Nairobi, Lagos, Nigeria. I can see who's competing for traveled the furthest via Zoom.
Right.
Terry. Okay, Terry is, thank you for referencing the Walt Disney World as the point of reference. Thank you. Yes, Amy, I would love to chat with you. So definitely let's talk about that. And so folks are still coming into the Zoom room today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to let Douglas tell you a little bit more about himself and his credentials and, why you should really take his advice and listen to what he has to say. But I do want to let you know that he is terrific. He's an expert in messaging. So, and that is at the crux of everything that is important to a nonprofit. When you really break it down, which Douglas did for me, thank you, Douglas, it ties into how you fundraise, how successful you are in fundraising, but it can go further than that too. It also has to do with talent acquisition and management and retention and all the stuff that many of you who wear multiple hats have to worry about. So really communication is so at the key, is just a key intersection of everything that you do. He is an expert in messaging, specifically has devoted his work to working with mission-driven organizations like yours. And he has a long background, quite a vast background in working in the for-profit world before making that switch. So anyway, Douglas Spencer. Hi, Douglas.
Hi.
Douglas is here and he will tell you a little bit more about Spencer Brenneman and his own personal background and professional background. And we welcome your questions. So as you, please feel free to participate fully. If you need something, I will be monitoring the chat. I will be monitoring raised hands, things like that. If you need anything, just let me know. You can always send a message privately to me if it's something you don't want to share with the whole room. And I will be happy to answer questions. I know we're going to save some time at the end of the presentation for questions. And that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much it for now. So Douglas, thank you. I'm going to mute myself and let you take over.
All right. Well, Amy, thank you so much. I love working with you and I love what your organization does. And so I'm very excited to talk about this. And I'm going to try to pace myself, because when I get excited, I start talking more quickly. And so if you feel like I'm talking too fast, just send something in chat and said, slow down, buddy, slow down. All right, so before we get started, I wanted to read you a before description of a message that I think could be better. Leading Cities, an international nonprofit organization, is a global leader in smart city solutions, city diplomacy, and collaboration, advancing sustainability and resilient city strategies and technologies to improve the quality of life in cities around the world. So this kind of statement about your organization and its work is very common. Lots of organizations have language like that. But the challenge is that for most people who you're trying to influence, it's going to take them a while to get through that. So the whole thing that we want to talk about is, how do you make certain you have a message that is clear and gets people excited to join you in the work that you do? So as Amy mentioned, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a messaging and branding strategy consultant. I am indeed based in Boston, and we help mission-driven organizations, so not-for-profit associations, social enterprises. We help anybody that's trying to solve a societal problem beyond shareholder value. We help them take a step back, think about who they are in this moment, and who are the people that are most important to their success? Employees, donors, funders. Who are the ones that they need to connect with through their message in the most authentic and compelling way? I did write a book, which you can find on Amazon. Do they care? The one question all brands should ask themselves. Is focused a bit more towards the for-profit sector, because I was still, when I wrote it, I was still had my head in those clouds, so to speak. But now I'm in these clouds, which I like a lot more. Before I went out on my own and started Spencer Brenneman 7.5 years ago, I was head of brand management for a large corporation called Thomson Reuters. And we rolled out a global brand, $13 billion information provider. And it was a great experience that I learned a lot. And I know that there's so many things I learned from working in that scale, that organizations at a much smaller scale and much smaller budgets can really benefit from. So that's what I do. And then last, I also have a podcast called Messaging on a Mission. I would love, love, love for you to check it out. We just launched an episode today about inclusive decision-making and how you need to have inclusive discussions in order to have inclusive decisions made. I really am excited about this episode. You can find out more by going to the URL messaging.show. And if any of you have a story you want to tell about your message and the work that your organization does, let me know that as well. I'm always looking for guests. So that's it for me. Today, we're going to do an introduction, but guess what? We just finished that one. So check that one off the list. We're going to talk about why messaging is so important, the ingredients of a strong message, why messaging sometimes fails, and then how to tell if your message is failing you, your fundraising, and, as Amy suggested, more. And then we're going to open it up for a discussion, and I'm looking forward to it. And again, I'll try to keep my enthusiasm containable. So why is messaging so important? Well, it really is like water. We all need water. It is very important. But first, I have a question. So do you think that your organization has a clear idea of who you help and whom you do not? Yep, absolutely. We know who we can help and who we don't. We do, but we don't always stick with it. Or no, we try to help everyone. Let's throw some things out in the chat. How do you react to that question? Does your organization have a clear idea of who you help?
So you guys can just drop this in the chat and we'll see how everybody feels about what their messages are.
And
yes,
don't
absolutely.
be shy.
Yes, but we don't always stick to it. And no, we try to help everyone.
Okay, we got some yeses. Very good. We can make it even clearer. Good, good, good. But we don't always stick to it. Yep, that's, the thing about what I call social entrepreneurs or people that are trying to fix a social challenge is that the great thing about them is they want to solve problems, and they want to solve problems. The challenging thing about them is that they want to solve problems. And whenever there's a problem, they want to try to fix it, even if it distracts them from the original problem they're trying to solve. So that's where, believe it or not, your message can really help. And we're going to get to that in a second. Yes, but we're limited in what we can do. We don't always stick with it. Great. Okay.
Yeah, we got a couple of those. Don't always stick to it.
Yeah, very natural. All right, so let's move on. So here's why messaging is so important. First of all, you have to stand out. You've got competition. I know that in the for-profit space, we don't like to think about competition. That seems also icky and dirty in corporate, but you are competing for donors, and they want to know that you're innovative. They want to know that you're having an impact, and they certainly want to know that you are that you have integrity, that you're approaching your work with integrity. And they want to know that from anybody that they support. In this job market, in the United States especially, you are also competing for talent. They want to know about what kind of environment you have as an employer. They want to know what are your values, and they want to know how do you make your employees feel valued. And these are messages that are really important for everybody who's trying to get the best and keep the best talent. And then media, for example, the media want to know that you're trustworthy. They want to know that you have credibility. They want to know that you have influence, and they want to know that you do have impact, integrity, and innovation, just as the potential donors do. So you are competing for a lot, and there's a lot more ways you're competing as well, but these are just 3 examples. And your message is what's going to help you in that competition. And then relationships. A message is how you start a relationship with the people most important to your success. And those are donors, those are employees, those are funders, any type of person that is integral to your success. Your relationship starts with a message. It has to have authenticity. It has to have credibility. It has to have believability. So your message is integral to starting what you hope are long-term relationships. So that's another reason why the message is so very important for your entire organization. And believe it or not, your message can drive efficiencies. Nobody wants to reinvent the wheel. Nobody wants to debate the same topic over and over again, or do something that's outside of their expertise. So your message, when it's well crafted, can help you be more efficient. And then, as I suggested before, your message can also help you stay focused. And I'll give you very specific examples in a minute. But if you say that you do this, this, and this, well, then that's what you should focus on. And anything that doesn't fall into those categories, you don't do. You hand off to another organization who does. So those are some of the reasons. And one of the great things that somebody said to me once is, wow, I now have the power to say no. Because again, people just want to help. And finally, one of the reasons that messaging is so important, and I apologize for using such a cliched metaphor as the 3-legged stool, but I'm going to do it. And it is cliched, but let's think about it. The only reason your organization exists is for results. You want to create results for the people you're trying to help, whether those are children, whether that's all of us and the environment. You are looking for results. Well, how do you get results? Results rely on three things. First of all, fundraising, right? You can't get results without having the capital to do it. Second of all, you have to have your colleagues. You can't do it. You have to have a team of committed professionals who are engaged in the work, who understand the work, and who can get those results. And you need to have a strategy to do that. You can't just say, we're going to save the world, and then just hope it happens. You got to have a set strategy. You got to have people to help you do it, and you got to have money to do it. But here's the thing. Your message is what holds it all together. Your message connects your fundraising to your end results, connects your strategy to your end results, and most importantly, perhaps, connects your colleagues, your team to the end results. Your message keeps people focused, it keeps people engaged, and it keeps people excited about the work that you do. Those are just some of my thoughts on why messaging is important. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the ingredients to a strong message. Now, as I referenced before, y'all have competition, and you need to think about how do you differentiate yourself relative to all the other choices people have with their time, talent, and treasure. So your message does have to come through that way. But the second thing is it has to have authenticity. We are, every day, I think we get a little bit more jaded or a little bit more suspect or a little bit more on guard because we want to make certain that people are talking to us mean what they say and say what they mean. And so authenticity is really important. And I know a lot of people make fun of millennials, but one of the reasons I have so much respect for millennials is that they do put such a high premium on authenticity. And it's something for the better that I think is making its way into all messaging strategy. And you've got to come across as authentic. And then you also have to come across with emotion, because no matter what the decision is, we all make decisions emotionally and analytically. So perfect example is, I need a car to get to work. Okay, that's an analytical need. I might want a red car because it's a cool color, or I might want a sports car because I like driving fast, or I might like blah, 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 blah. So we have an emotional desire, but most of the time we back it up with an analytical need. And that goes for the same for supporting organizations. I want to help the environment. But I want to help this particular organization because I just really like them. I have a connection with them. I feel something when I interact with this organization. So we've come up with a way, and this is not a sales pitch by any stretch of the imagination, so I apologize if this is the only part that might come across as one, but we have a framework for doing that. And it starts with the why. Why do you do what you do? And this speaks to the need for authenticity. So, it might be easy to think about, well, we want to save the environment. Well, yeah, there's more to it than that. So why do you care, and why should anybody else? Then there's the what and the how. What do you do exactly? And how do you do it differently than all the other options people have? That speaks to differentiation. And then there's the way. What is the way that your message comes to life? What are the emotional layers to your message that get people excited, that get people that help make people feel something when they're listening to what you do? So the why, the what and how, and the way. So let's go back to Leading Cities. That's the description. That's the organization whose old description I read at the very beginning. So we're going to look at what their why is. So we worked with them a couple of years ago, and I'm going to walk you through how the framework applies to Leading Cities. And typically, I would introduce Leading Cities to what they do, but that defeats the whole purpose. I'm going to lead you through the process. So their why is that they believe unleashing the potential of the world's cities will drive resilience and sustainability for everyone. Unleashing the potential of the world city will drive resilience and sustainability sustainability for all. I knew I could do it. All right, so now let's look at their what and how. What is it they do and how do they do it differently than anybody else? All right, what do they do? Leading cities connect cities across the globe with the innovations that solve our most pressing challenges. That is what they do. How do they do that? Well, they do that by first cultivating a global network of forward thinkers from the public, private, academic, and nonprofit sectors. Their proof point for that is Leading Cities Member Network. The second way that they connect cities across the globe with innovations to solve our most pressing challenges is nurturing and supporting the most promising startups and connecting them with cities ready to benefit from their work. And they do that through this really cool program called Acela City and Acela Gov. And then finally, they do that by delivering advanced research, emerging trends and technologies through consulting services from global experts. And that's through their program called Leading Consulting. So you put it all together and you get something like Leading Cities connect cities across the globe with the innovations that solve our most pressing challenges. We do that by cultivating a global network of forward thinkers, nurturing and supporting the most promising startups, and delivering advanced research and emerging trends from global experts. So if you look at that and compare that to what I read in the beginning, I hope you will see that it's a lot more clear, it's a lot more compelling, and it's got a lot more excitement. I'll just give you a second to read the first one again.
Douglas, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Can you, for anyone that might be asking this, how does this compare to your mission statement?
Excellent point. I sometimes think that they are, I like to think that the why statement is very much like the mission statement. It is the highest purpose of your work. There are others who have different philosophies on what mission statement should say, but I like to keep things as simple as possible. And by calling it the why statement, it gets it out of that headspace that people have with mission statements, because I think sometimes people think mission statements have to be like use hoity language and have at least 3 or 4 sentences and be very dramatic. And my point of view is it needs to be simple. And I'll show you some examples of that as we move forward. Okay. And here is where I was going, what I was referencing before about the whole focus element. So another superpower of the hows are its ability to bring you focus. So let's use a ridiculous example from Leading Cities. And again, this is a ridiculous example. A corporate adopt a city program akin to what's done for highways. Now, for those of you who are outside the United States, we have this thing where organizations will adopt a mile or two of a highway and help pay for it and take care of it and things like that. It's actually, I think, kind of ridiculous, but whatever, irrelevant. So let's say someone goes to the executive director of Leading Cities, says, hey, let's have a corporate adopt a city program. All right, well, does that further our ideals or our hows of cultivating a global network of forward thinkers from the public, private, academic, and nonprofit sectors? That would be a no. Does it nurture and support the most promising startups and connect them with cities ready to benefit from their work? Also a no. And does it deliver advanced research, emerging trends, and technologies through consulting services from global experts? That too is a big fat no. So that means that this corporate adopt a city program is not a great idea for Leading Cities based on the message framework that we've created, the focus and messaging framework that we've created for them. And then finally, we have the way, the emotional layers that go along with your message. And for them, they are measured. They believe that a methodical approach to innovation brings about the most transformative change. They're supportive. They work collaboratively to mitigate the frustrations inherent in driving change, especially in municipalities. They're hopeful. We see a future in which cities are vibrant centers of sustainability, equity, and inclusion. And they're bold. Their drive to bring about resilience and prosperity is undaunted. So those are adjectives. Those are personality attributes that should come to life in their messaging. All right. So how do messages fail? Because we all have messages that we put forward within our organizations, and they're great. Sometimes they're better than others, but at one point they're great. So how do they fail? First of all, another question. When was the last time your message was updated? Within the last year, 3 years, 5 years, or longer than 5 years? Let's see some chat responses. When was the last time your organization's message was updated? 2 years, 9 months. All right, last year. Good.
I see somebody has their hand up. And
last year. Good. Well, I see last year. Great. All right. Well, we're going to move on, but and Amy, when you get the question, let me know and we'll take that. So when was the last time your message? Well, has the world changed since your message was updated? And if your message has not been updated in the last 12 months, then yeah, the world's changed. Has your approach to what you do changed? Again, in the last 9 to 12 months, probably. And has your audience changed? Maybe, maybe not. And then also, have you been saying the same thing for a long time? Now, their repetition is really important when it comes to helping people embrace your message. However, you can't use the same examples over and over and over again. I was on the board of a nonprofit here in Boston, and our former mayor every year would come to our galas and tell the exact same anecdote. And it went on for like 9 years. It was almost comical. But the point is, you need new material, even if you're proving the same point. So sometimes messages fail because they are out of date. Also, sometimes we just use too much jargon and it just spins in other people's heads. So language is contagious. Think about all the things you say on a daily basis that you've picked up from pop culture, from television, from your significant other, from your kids, from your family. We all have sayings, and the same thing holds true internally. So when we start using shorthand to reference a program name, guess what? That's going to end up outside. It's going to end up in your message, and no one outside the organization is going to know what the heck you're talking about. Jargon trips people up, slows them down, and in our times of limited attention span, it's going to send them elsewhere. So stay away from jargon. Excuse me. And then trying to be all things to all people, it never works. Messages have to be targeted. They have to be appropriate. They have to be relevant. Not everybody needs to know about your work. There are some people never going to touch it because either they don't have the capacity to act or engage, or they've already made their mind up in something completely different, or they're just not in your realm. So not everybody has to know your message. So don't write it as if they do. So here's some examples. So we've been working with the Massachusetts Children's Alliance and the New York State Children's Alliance, and they typically use this phrase called membership organization. They are membership organizations made up of 12 and 46, respectively, child advocacy centers, which they call CACs. Again, more jargon. So the point is, no one needs to know that they're a membership organization, at least not in the beginning. Think very carefully about to whom you're speaking and what they need to know at any given point. Don't feel like you have to explain, your message has to explain everything right away. It doesn't. Your message should be a cadence. It should be a slow, in the beginning, as I mentioned before, the beginning of a relationship. And here's a before and after, again, and I'll let you read this while I drink some water, a before and after using that whole reference of the membership organization and the CACs. everything in there before is absolutely true, but it's not necessary right away to get people engaged in what they actually do. Okay, and then finally, sometimes they feel that there's no clear point. It's clear to you why you're telling somebody something, but it's not always clear to somebody else. And often you get the kind of I couldn't find one of those pictures of puppies looking at you like this, but I think this owl is pretty close. Sometimes we confuse people because we're in our own heads and we forget that not everything in our heads is in other people's heads. So your message has to have a very clear call to action. Come learn what it's like to work with us. Donate now, come to an event, subscribe to our newsletter. Be very specific about what you want out of the conversation, the message that you're sending out. Okay, so here's how to tell if your message is failing your fundraising and more. All right, first of all, another question. Which adjective best describes the tone your organization's message? Is it serious? Is it optimistic, academic, joyous, or no real tone of voice at all? Let's see some answers. Does your message, you don't have to say what it is, but do you feel like, yes or no, do you feel like your organization has a personality, a tone of voice to all of your communication? Optimistic, yes, good. Yes. Serious, good. Well, it's important to think about that, and I'll show you why in a second. I think maybe next. Oh, no, we're going to talk about a few things. All right. So your message has to reflect your personality. It has to make sense to everyone. It has to differentiate you. There's that bird again. It has to differentiate you and your work. And it has to connect to a higher ideal, things we've talked about. So your personality, your organization should have a personality that comes alive in images, that comes alive in the words you use and the tone of voice that you use around those words. Let me give you an example. Here is the Nature Conservancy. Let's plant together. Join us tomorrow for a live and online event that will mix entertainment and inspiration, featuring people from across the globe who are making every day an Earth Day. Very upbeat, very inclusive, very engaging. Okay. Fossil fuels are fueling war. The climate crisis and the war in the Ukraine have the same roots: fossil fuels and our dependency on them. A peaceful, green, and just world is possible. Two completely different tones of voice. Neither one is wrong or right. It's just who they are for those organizations, but two completely different tones of voice. And your organization really does have to have a tone of voice that it sticks with. And I think if you to look through Greenpeace's site, this same kind of urgency, this tone of voice is going to be prevalent everywhere. Same with the Nature Conservancy. They're going to be very optimistic and they're going to be very encouraging. And that's great. All right. Less is more. Your message needs to make sense to everyone. Test it out. Test it out with your accountant. Not to diss on accountants, but typically accountants are not typically engaged in the ins and outs and the nuances and the politics and of your work. So ask your accountant, what do you think about this? Ask your web developer. Ask your UPS carrier, which I could have done 15 minutes ago because of course they came when I'm doing a webinar. Ask anybody that's not in your world. And just a little bit, I'm going to get on a soapbox here for a second. Less is more. I love this quote by Mark Twain. I didn't have time to write you a short note, so I wrote you a long one instead. Point is, it's harder to be concise, but it's so much more important. Okay, I'm getting off that soapbox now. And it has to make sense to everyone. Again, you have to think about who are you talking to? What do you want out of them? So here's an example. And I do not know this organization, and apologies if anybody from this organization is here. New Harvest is a nonprofit research institute that supports open public cured meat research. Founded in 2004, we are the world's longest running organization dedicated to advancing the field of cellular architecture. Our mission is to maximize the positive impact of cellular architecture, agriculture. Huh? What? I don't know what that means. Now, there are lots of people who don't know what that means, but is that what you want to lead with? Here's another organization called Wholesome Wave. Food insecurity is about providing enough food to those in need. Nutrition insecurity is about providing the right food to prevent or alleviate diet-related diseases. Program concepts are designed to raise and reinvest private funding to demonstrate that what might happen if public funding were used more effectively. I'm not associated with this organization. I didn't write that. I would have tweaked a few things, but the whole point is that it's clear that they're trying to use nutrition to solve people's health problems. Differentiate work. I think we talked a lot about that already. I won't spend too much more time on it, but you need to make certain that your message differentiates your work so that people know if they want to support you or not. And not even know if they want to, but really feel like they want to. And it's not necessarily about supremacy or about being better than another organization. Sometimes it's just different. And I'll give you an example of that in a second. But I also encourage folks to think more broadly about the people that they're competing with. So for example, if you work with children from in the US from Black and brown communities, you might also have to think about the message that, say, traditionally Black universities, because you might be competing with them as well. So it's not just specifically what you do, it's about what's important to the folks who are important to you. And here's an example of the differentiation. Youth and emergency services. We are the only nonprofit in the area that works slowly with homeless and near homeless youth. There are other shelters, but we serve younger, more vulnerable demographic that may not feel safe staying in an adult shelter. Not saying that the other shelters are bad. They're just saying how they're different and why that matters. So your differentiation absolutely is important. And then you've got to connect to a higher ideal. Why should anyone give you money? Why should anyone show up to work every day? Why should they believe you what you're saying? Now, there's a book by the name, called Start With Why by a guy named Simon Sinek, who is now known as a futurist, but parenthetically, I know someone who knew him when he was an intern. But his whole premise of his book is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. What you do simply proves what you believe. What you do simply proves what you believe. And even though you're not necessarily technically selling things, you're selling ideals, you're selling possibilities. So people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So here's some examples. Again, the leading cities, driving resilience and sustainability for all unleashes the potential of the world's cities. Here's one of our clients that I referenced earlier. The most promising leading edge ways to help victims of child abuse. That's why they're there. That's why they exist. That's why they show up for work every morning. That's why they want you to join them and give them some money to help victims of child abuse. Here's another one. The Massachusetts LGBT Chamber of Commerce cultivates inclusive relationships between LGBT-owned businesses and the corporate sector too. And here's their why: drive economic impact throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Drive economic impact. And then another one, and this one's going to be really hard to read. It's called Pride in Our Workplace, amplifying LGBTQ voices to drive positive change. So driving positive change in the workplace for LGBTQ folks and the organizations for whom they work, that is their higher purpose. Okay, I've been doing a lot of fast talking. We've 40 minutes into it. We're heading towards the last bit of it, but now let's get specific. Let's get specific around fundraising, talent management, overall efficiency, decision-making, and media relations. So here I'm going to give you some practical tips on how to determine if your message is failing you in any of these areas. And there is a download. You don't have to you don't have to scribble all this down immediately. There will be a download for you that you can have and use on your own. So just know that that's coming. All right, fundraising. All right, so how can you raise funds more confidently? When I say confidently, a lot of times we'll go out, we'll try to raise money, and we just hope that this appeal letter will work. Well, wouldn't it be nice to know that it's going to work? So here's some ways to do that. First of all, do some benchmarking. Look at year-on-year results, and of course, campaign results, but not just look at the results, look at the messages that went along with them. So in 2019, we had a focus on individual empowerment. How did that go relative to 2022? We're going to forget 20 and 21. How did that relate to 2022 when we used a focus of education? And then do campaign results. Look at how each campaign did and what was the main focus of your message there. Then there's research. Do a survey of your donor base or those who look like your donor base. Do they understand your message? Do they find it relevant, compelling? And do they support similar organizations along with or over yours? Now we're going to take a slight sidestep here and talk a bit about research, because I'm going to talk about research again. And one of the things that I've encountered in my career, almost from the very beginning in for-profit and not-for-profit, is this idea that people say, oh, we don't need to do research. We don't need to do research. We know, I know what people are thinking. Well, guess what? They don't. And with all due respect, neither do you. I don't know. No one knows. One example I like to use is that for Pride in Our Workplace, we did some research for them, and they were absolutely horrified to find out that people thought their events were cliquey. They never, ever, ever would have found that out if it weren't for the research that we did. So no, you don't know. So you do need research. You can do, there's another reason why research work rocks, in my opinion, and that is if you don't do research, you're not communicating with the people most important to your success. You're just talking at them. You're just sending messages out and making them listen. But if you're actually pulling their feedback in, that is a conversation. So you can hire a firm. Sometimes those are expensive, sometimes those are not. You can do it yourself. There are a lot of very inexpensive or free tools out there. I would encourage you, if you're going to do it yourself and don't have a background in market research, to keep it as simple as possible, and really keep the survey simple and really keep what you want to learn simple. So don't try to understand everything, just try to understand the most important questions. And you can also have discussion groups or focus groups. If you do that, I would recommend having a third party do it, because people are a little bit more candid, and often third party facilitators know how to put a tamp down on group speak. Okay, the side conversation, the side chat on research is now closed. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program. Here's something to try when you're thinking about your fundraising. And this is something from the direct marketing world. Do A/B testing. So take your mailing list and divide it in half. Send one half a message that has one focus, and the other half a message that has a different focus, and see which one performs better. Now, it's important to only change one thing between the two groups, because otherwise you won't really know which was the factor that was better or worse. But give it a try. A/B testing can go, it's very easy to do. Most email programs like MailChimp or Constant Contact, most of them will help you do that pretty easily. But do A/B testing as much as you can. And then do something we like to call a messaging audit. Look at all the other organizations with whom you compete for funds, and look at what they're saying on their websites. How are they positioning themselves? Are they positioning themselves as a future-focused organization? Are they positioning themselves as a hands-on organization? Who are they talking to? How clear is their message overall? What kind of tone of voice are they using? And then how are they using social media? Take a look at that about your competitors and look at how you're doing that yourself. And so for raising funds, these are these 4 ways. These are some ways that you can really look at your message to see how it's performing. But let's talk about other areas. Let's also talk about talent management. Again, research, survey your current employees. Now, granted, if you only have 5 people, that will be a very short survey and a very short exercise, but it's still important. Do they understand the message? Does your message, and this is really important, does your message that you send out to the world, does it align with reality? A lot of times it doesn't. And there's a really good reason for that, because as we work, the world changes in increments, right? Things are just a little bit different. And so after time, our focus just changes a little bit, but sometimes our message is still pointed in this direction, but our work is actually over here. So does it stand up to reality is a really important question to ask. Are they motivated by it? And do they want to recommend working there to others? Do a messaging audit with that veil of employment. So how do other organizations position themselves as being an employer of choice? And those things, kind of things like clarity and so forth. Do exit interviews when you can. Ask people why they're leaving. Was it because their message did not align with reality? Was it because they didn't believe or connect or embrace the message? Were they able to explain your message to others? Things like that. And then for efficiency, this is kind of another soapbox that I like to get on, and that is that your message can help drive efficiencies. Now, this is particularly important if you're a really small hands-on operation. Try to keep a central repository of commonly used content, boilerplates, calls to action. It's so easy to do now. Just get a Google Drive account, get a Dropbox or Box account, or blah, blah, blah. There's lots of different options like that out there. But set up a repository of things so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Spell out what they can change and what they can't. Put together a catalog of FAQs. You can even create like a Wikipedia kind of style document where people go in and they throw in a question they've been asked and how they answered it, and people can comment. Again, very easy with the free tools that are available now. Style guides are so important because consistency is also important and helps you work smarter. Are you a shop that likes the Oxford comma? Personally, I love the Oxford comma. And it makes me sad that not everybody sees in the Oxford comma what I see, but neither here nor there. Do you use and or ampersand? What are your acronyms, and which ones do you have to use and which ones can you get rid of? And again, what are your tone of voice? Make certain everybody knows that you're supposed to be optimistic or that you're supposed to be serious. Make sure everyone knows. And then ask your colleagues if they feel like they are reinventing the wheel all the time, if they see bottlenecks in how you work, and how does that align to your message, and does that align with decision making? And decision making, yes, no, maybe. Do you have guiding principles that guide how your organization operates, how you make decisions, how you approach doing what you do? And if you do have those, does your message align with it? A lot of times the message drives the alignment, and sometimes it's the principles that drive the message. Doesn't matter. They have to be aligned. Does everyone understand and support them? That too is really important. And then one litmus test I like to ask is, y'all spend a lot of time arguing about the same things? Do you feel as if there's too much bickering about how to execute on something on your mission? Well, if that's the case, then your message is out of whack. Your message is not helping you keep focused. There is a CEO of a pharma company here in Greater Boston and Cambridge who carries around, they're called brand principles, which is the same as the what and the hows that I've talked about. And he takes it to meetings with him. He has it laminated. He takes it to meetings and he says, all right, well, how does that align with these 3 things or these 4 things? And so you really have to stay structured on that. And that can really cut down on a lot of bickering because it's already determined, you've already made those decisions. And then get the media. The media are really important. Do some research on your media. Who is getting quoted in the local press that you should be getting quoted instead? What are they saying? What kind of point of view do they have that's significantly different from theirs? Talk to your local reporters or talk to reporters anywhere and say, how can we help you? How can we help you? What is important to you in a media source? And I'm going to tell you, the first thing they're going to say is reacting quickly to requests. Invite them, get to know them, and have your message be consistently developed and shared with them. And then again, do a messaging audit, just like we talked about before. But when you're looking at your competitors, look at what they're saying to the media and look at how they are being portrayed in the media, if those are things that you are looking for. Okay, again, I said that when I get excited, I talk really fast and but we are almost out of time, shockingly. So just a reminder that your end results all are being held together by your message. Your fundraising, you cannot affect positive change if you don't have fundraising, if you don't have a strong team, if you don't have a strategy, and your message holds all that together. You've got to reflect your personality. It's got to make sense for everyone. It's got to differentiate your work, and it's got to connect to a higher level. And then it's got to stay fresh. Avoid jargon, be specific, and have a clear call to action. Now see, I just broke my own rule. I said CTA when I really should have spelled out call to action. So there are some, if you go to the URL that I think Amy's already sent out, you will find, you can download this presentation, you can download the worksheet, you can ask me follow-up questions, you can find me on LinkedIn. I am available to talk to you if you want to set up a call. More than happy to jump on a call with any of you. So, and again, check out my, sorry for the blatant double promo. Please check out messaging.show, especially if you want to be a guest. Okay, done going blah, blah, blah. Happy to answer whatever questions you might have now.
Oh, Douglas, thank you. All right, folks, so you can send in your questions. I'm happy, if you'd like to send it in through the Q&A, I'm happy to keep your question anonymous if you feel more comfortable with that. Or if you have a question you want to share with everybody, feel free to drop it into the chat. Fortunately, we do have a few minutes to go over some questions. And I do have one here for you, Douglas, that is, it is anonymous. Going back to your why statements, do that approach work better with any particular generation, or is that more for millennials, or is that any generation?
Oh, that's a really great question. That's interesting. It works for everyone. However, I think when you've put it together, you should keep in mind to whom you're speaking. If you are speaking to a very specific group of people that are in a particular generation, then make sure your why speaks to them especially. But no, everyone is concerned with the why of an organization. So it applies to everyone. It just might come out differently.
I had to unmute myself. Sorry. So you mentioned finding out what competitive organizations are saying. What's the best way for you? How do you practice that?
How do you practice that? Well, I think that it is just taking a step back and thinking about who are the other organizations that are going after the same donors, going after the same employees, going after the same media contacts, for example. Who are those same organizations? And just look at their websites and get a sense of what they're saying. Talk to people if you know people on their board. If you know people who used to work there, talk to them and get a sense for how they position themselves in the world. And it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list. We typically suggest like 5 or 6 organizations that have similar remits, and just take a real careful look at them and then look at your own message.
So we have a question that came through also in chat. How do you overcome cynicism with regard to the role of the mission or the why statement?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question.
That's the secret sauce.
Cynicism is hard. And I think that overcoming cynicism is hard. You know, a lot of it has to do with asking questions like, why do you feel this isn't important? Well, what's the alternative? What if we don't have a reason? And then just, it's really hard. I wish I had a very simple answer to that question, but I don't, because it's a hard one. I would, read Simon Sinek's book, Start with Why. Perhaps there's some examples there that would be relevant to your business, or to your organization, and then compare and contrast. Take a look at the other organizations that are getting your donors' monies and say, here's why it works. It works for them. So why do you think it's not going to work for us? They have a very specific why, and that's why they are getting more donors than we are.
Excellent. Thank you. And yeah, and I happen to be a very cynical person. I'm so jaded. It's hilarious. So sorry. I apologize to my kids for this all the time. But I would suggest too, like sometimes it has maybe build up your, not build up, but promote your credibility as an organization, because sometimes people are cynical because they've been burned.
Right. And also get some internal coalition, get an internal coalition, get other people in your organization of like minds to get behind you and say, yeah, we really need to make certain we are agreed on our why.
So last call for questions. I have a quick one here too. You mentioned there are some good tools for surveying your audience or surveying your donors. Could you give us a quick list?
Sure. Google Forms, easy, very simple. SurveyMonkey. There's one that's a little expensive, but it's really interesting. And the name is, rats, I can't think of it. But SurveyMonkey and Google Forms are the ones that are the most accessible, and ones that a lot of people are used to. So I would start with those two.
Yeah, thank you. Those are helpful. And I think the challenge, this is where you really come in. This is where you would really be helpful, is that how do you figure out which questions to ask? That's the key to the
Well,
survey.
so one way to think about it, and I have my undergraduate degree is in journalism. And so the way I approach most things are using the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So think about what it is you're trying to understand and go through those questions. What is important to people? How do they want to receive their information? When are they thinking about the work we do? Why does it matter to them? So that's one way to get started. And I just made those up. I mean, yours would be different for each situation, but that's one structure that's readily available that you could get you started.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you so much, Douglas. Thank you. Folks, I did drop a link into the chat, so feel free to follow that link to get all of the resources that Douglas spoke of earlier. And thank you all for taking time out. I greatly appreciate it. And as
Me too.
many of you who've been here before, we appreciate everything that you guys do. Your work is so important. And our why is really to help you be able to do it better, have fewer sleepless nights, be able to get that work done. So thank you. And Douglas, I will leave it to you to final words.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I'm, again, incredibly honored to be a part of the great work you do in just a small way, just by being able to do this webinar. So thank you very much. And please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. You can find me very easily through the link that Amy shared. Have a great day and fast approaching weekend.